Hey everyone, I'm Chelsea from Chelsea Makes. I am a maker, a miniaturist, and I've been a Glowforge owner for almost 5 years. I am really excited because today we're gonna go on a behind the scenes look at how I create miniatures from start to finish. I typically work with Adobe Illustrator because it's what I'm most comfortable with. And then you can use whatever you like, whether Thinkscape. This is Millie. She is product control. She tests all of the miniatures. After we move into the design software, which I will walk you through the basics of, can you move, miss? We're then gonna pick out some Proofgrade material, throw in our Glowforge, and get started with cutting it. Millie, you're gonna have to move. The first step in this process is to gather inspiration. So when it comes to inspiration, there are tons of places you can look, recreate something in your house that you love, or you can just go on Pinterest or Instagram. Today, we're gonna be looking to create a mid-century modern table. I'm already seeing a ton of things I like. I like this really oval table, but I also think this pill shape might be kind of nice and unique. I think that's what I'm gonna do for the top. And for the legs, I think this sort of tapered leg that still has a kind of straight up top post. I think I'm gonna combine these two ideas to create something that is completely our own. When it comes to miniatures, there are a lot of different scales to work in. For me, the scale that I typically work in is 1 to 12. So if you know that you have a table that's 3 feet by 4 feet, then it's exactly 3 inches by 4 inches. Now, to determine the best dimensions for our miniature table, I went ahead and measured our actual dining room table. Ours is approximately 3 feet by 6 feet. The height of the table is around 30 inches. For our miniature table, that means that if we take these same dimensions, we will end up with a miniature table that is 3 inches by 6 inches and 2.5 inches tall. I saw some really great oval tables, but I think my favorite were those pill-shaped tables. We will refine this in our design program. So I'm going to set this dimension at 3 inches, this dimension at 6 inches, and then it'll be time to worry about the legs. One option is to create individual legs that get attached separately to the table. The one thing I don't love about this is that there's some room for our legs to be attached sort of inconsistently. So instead, I'm going to create legs that are attached to one another with a crossbeam. We'll have one crossbeam of legs going this way and another going this way. The thickness of each of these legs needs to allow for a gap so that these two pieces of material can cross each other. This will become a little bit more clear once we get into our design software. This is going to be ridiculously easy to do on the Glowforge. If you're new to Illustrator, this workspace is called Essentials Classic. So I'm going to select the rectangle tool, and if I just click once and release, the dimensions pop-up comes in and we can type in exactly the dimensions that we want for our table. Now this gives us our rectangle table, but of course we know that we want a rounded edge table. Illustrator gives you the option with these little widgets in the corner that allow you to round the edge. Click and drag those until they come to a perfect circle there. You can see when it turns red, that's gone as much as it can go. So that was great. That was so easy. I want my table legs to go across the length of the table. I'm gonna click P for pen tool. I'm just gonna really quickly draw a shape like this across the length of my table. This is about where I want the table leg to attach to the table. I'm just gonna select both the line that I just created, and I'm gonna hold Shift to select the tabletop. And using these tools here at the top, I'm just going to make sure it's centered in every way possible. I'm going to set this line to be a score line instead of a cut. Then later, I know where to attach them on the bottom. So I've changed this to red. When it comes to Glowforge, it doesn't matter what color, as long as you're indicating 2 separate colors for 2 different types of cuts. So I'm going to select that line, click Object, Transform, Reflect. I'm going to reflect across the vertical axis. I want to make sure I'm selecting Copy. Now that we have these crossing lines, which indicate where we are going to attach the legs to the underside of the table, we want to create the legs themselves. We're going to go to Window. We're going to drop down to Document Info. And in case you don't see this screen, you're going to want to make sure that you have objects selected in this little additional window here. And that tells me that this line that I have drawn is 4.3 inches. Now this is not a hard fast rule. You can change it from here, but this tells you what the length. I am going to grab my rectangle tool and I'm going to set my height to 2.5 inches and I'll set the width to 4.5 inches, which is a little bit longer than the length here, but I think will just work perfectly fine. And I want to set this color as a guide. I know I don't want to print it. I'm just going to pick a blue color here. The next thing I want to do is I want to offset this line. Just have this guide selected and I'll go to Object, Path, Offset Path, and I'm just going to do 1/4 of an inch, which is 0.25. Align these two to the bottom and I'll select the pen tool. And I'm gonna do one line there and one line to the outer edge of those guides. I'm gonna hold Shift, which will give me a nice 90-degree angle there. And then I'm going to go straight up to the very top and I'll hold another 90 degrees over to approximately the center. Another 90 degrees up and over. It looks like that was still on blue, so I'm just going to use the eyedropper tool to select it so that it is a black line. And zooming in even more, I am just going to drag these to the very bottom. I'm going to use the direct select tool to click on this shape and you'll see that those widgets that we were using for the tabletop appear. If you want to modify just one widget at a time, you have to click and then click again, and you can hold Shift to drag it exactly where you want it to be. I do want to make a few more modifications to this shape first. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. So the next thing I want to do is I want to reflect this. So I'll do again, Object, Transform, Reflect, Copy. If yours don't align, you'll just select this line and just drag it so that the two overlap. From there, you'll select both objects and you'll open the Pathfinder window and click Merge or Unite. Now this gives us one solid table leg that we are going to use, and we're going to replicate this to create a secondary. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on our original red score lines. So I'll select one of the legs. I'm going to go to Object, Path, Offset Path. So I am going to assume that our width of our material is about 1/8 of an inch. Since 1/8 of an inch is 0.125, we want half of that, which is 0.0625. And that is going to give us the dimension of our material. I'll do the same thing with this side here. And basically what we need to know is what this dimension is. From here, where it first intersects, to here, where it crosses. So I'm just gonna do one line right here, and I'm gonna measure that line, basically by using Window, again, Document Info, and I have 0.3428. So I'm gonna just round that up to 0.4. I can delete all of these lines. So 0.4 is exactly the dimension that we need in order for these two legs to sit comfortably within each other. Select my rectangle tool, click once, select the width to be 0.4, and the height, I'm not gonna worry about too much. We'll modify that once we get into the file itself. I'm gonna select that tab, and I'm going to select our table legs there. And I'm going to use the Align tool to make sure that they're touching at the top. So I'll just select these two. And then I also want to make sure that they are centered. I'm going to turn off my guides because I no longer need them. But I'm gonna zoom into this piece and I'm gonna drag it so it is the full length of the table here. I'll check that height, that's 0.2299, a really nice round number. And what I'm gonna do with this is I'm going to halve that. So approximately, we're gonna do 0.11 inches for our height. Again, making sure that this is aligned to the top. I'm going to select Alt, hold Alt on the keyboard, which allows me to duplicate this shape. And on the second one, the second set of legs, we just want to align this gap to the bottom of the table legs. And that is so, again, we can sit these two legs crossed comfortably within one another. One side of the table legs and that gap, I'm going to use the Pathfinder tool to eliminate that top piece. Same thing with the other side, so eliminating that piece. Oops. If this happens, it means that the piece that you're trying to intersect with isn't quite nestled on the bottom. Just grab it like that, and it'll cut away. I like to be pretty conservative when it comes to using my materials, so I am just going to stack these in one another so that I'm making sure I'm using my material the best I can. Once I have these ready to go, I'm going to go File, Save As, and export this as an SVG. So I'm going to save it as an SVG to my desktop. And from there, we are ready to go to the Glowforge. If you're going to be sanding and you're working indoors, I definitely recommend wearing a respirator or a mask of some sort. All right, I think at this point I've got it really where I wanted it to be. So the next step is going to be to glue it all together. All right, now that our pieces are sanded, we're ready to assemble. I like to start with wood glue and a coffee stirrer, which is great for applying glue without too much mess. You want this notch to face upwards. I'm gonna attach it right to the score line, and then I'm gonna do the same thing on this side. And I'm also going to apply a tiny bit of glue in that notch as well. And now I'm just gonna leave it alone, give it some time to dry up, and then we'll get into decorating. I hope you enjoyed making this miniature table with me and Millie. I hope you learned something and at the very least might be inspired to try something of your own. If you have questions, please leave them in the comment section below and I'll do my best to answer as many of them as I can. Hey Millie, you wanna give me a paw? Good job. Good job. You get a treat. I think I need a treat too. Not this kind though.